Hello, everyone who might be tuning in to watch this. So, my name is Cullen Freeman. This past year, I played for the MSU Denver men's soccer team. I tore my ACL and my meniscus at the beginning of the year. So, what I did over the course of the year was I was our tactical analysis person. I would do all of our video analysis for ourselves as a team, as well as our opponent analysis. So, what I've done here to kind of showcase my work over the course of the year, and what I did was, I went back to one of our opponents and put together a full video of what that opponent analysis would look like. This ranged from how they would set up in their defensive principles, how they would set up in their attacking principles, what they looked like in and out of possession, as well as their set piece tendencies. So attacking set pieces, defending set pieces, and everything like that. For the purpose of this video, I'll also showcase some ideals of how my team, MSU Denver, looked to set up. So, in terms of what we're looking to do in and out of possession, tactically, how we look to set up, and what principles we're looking to showcase ourselves and how we want to go about playing our opposition in this case. So, Regis University. So, in the first part of this, I'll talk about just our principles, what we're trying to do as a whole as a team, and then I'll dive into the opponent analysis sector of what how we were looking to break down Regis, their tendencies, what they were looking to do again in and out of possession, everything like that. So we'll get into it here briefly. So yeah, real quick here, tactically, when we're looking at how we set up as a team at MSU Denver, it was a 3-4-1-2 shape. We had two wing backs, a double pivot in the middle of the field. We also played with the number 10, and then obviously the two strikers set up. So our key principles in possession, this evolved as the season went on, but we were big. What we focused on probably more than anything else was earning the right to play. So we showcased ourselves over the course of the season as we were really good in possession and building out. We had a couple of matches early on in the season. We played top ranked teams for the Division II landscape, such as University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, and Colorado State University, Pueblo, where we were really good in possession. They were pressing us high up the pitch. We were able to beat their press and advance up the field to a point where they no longer pressed us. They gave us the first third of the field. They sat in a mid or deep block, depending on the phase of the game. And that really proved to us that we'd earned the right to play against an opposition like Regis here. So again, we also had a big purpose and urgency kind of in our decision making and in possession. My coach, Nick Kirchhoff, was very much adamant that he wanted possession with a purpose. So when we had the ball, we were obviously looking to play within, move the ball around, find an overload or a chance to break forward, break lines, get into the attacking third. And then we're in the attacking third. Can we create a quality opportunity, whether that's service, whether that's, across anything, find a way to create a quality opportunity. So, like I said, there, I went in the final third, try to get the ball in wide areas, especially for this match. We're looking to get the ball in wide areas is something I identified in the opponent analysis was their center backs were poor in picking up markers, poor in communicating, and poor with just dealing with the balls in the box in general. So and then in transitional moments, both of our forwards, I would say, are pretty good athletes. I think superior athletes than most of the opponents we played. So look to capitalize in transitional moments. Our wingbacks are pretty good athletes, can get up and down the pitch. And we also, I feel like, have players that want to run both defensively and breaking forward. So that was something a big point for us was in transitional moments, look to capitalize on the space and physical matchups we might have against the opposition. So out of possession, work rate is probably the biggest principle that we showcase within our team and instilled as one of our main team values. Obviously, I think every team says that, but I think in the way we kind of set up out of possession, work rate was a huge principle for us. It usually looked like, again, like a 3-4-1-2 shape. The shape really didn't differ that much. It really depended on the opposition, how we were setting up, how we wanted our forwards to set up. If the opponent was in a 4-3-3, what were we looking to do with our wingbacks? Were our wingbacks looking to press high? In that case, do they have a single pivot? Can our 10 pick him up? They had a double pivot is one of our double pivots coming down to pick them up. So again, all depends on the matchup, the state of the game, the flow of the game. And I'll break into that a little bit in our opponent analysis here. But our forwards also were the ones that kind of lead the press defensively. And I know every team kind of says that their forwards, dictate how we press. But for us, it was even a bigger principle because our forwards dictated and where we were looking to force the opposition in terms of we had two forwards, so were we looking to force them in the wide areas? Did we think their outside backs might be a weak point in terms of their in possession setup or whatnot? So that was a key principle for us, and I think that was something at times that we struggled with. So I think that's an interesting something I want to touch on. Wing backs, again, like I mentioned, base their positioning off the phase of the game we're in. Are we sitting in a deep block? Are we sitting in a mid block? Are we pressing hard the pitch trying to win the ball? Again, what is the our opponent looking to do? Are they a team that's looking to value the ball in possession? Are they looking to be a team that's a little more direct? So all those principles kind of dictated how our wingbacks positioning was set up. And then as a whole, I think our team was very aggressive in duels and, going into tackles, looking to win the ball high up the pitch, to create chances. This also led to more transitional moments for us. So that'll be something I'll get into a little bit more with our opponent analysis sector here. So let this run a little bit. Yeah, so this was our team setup here for our match against Regis. I knew this going in. This again was not in the presentation I put together for our opponent analysis, but for the purpose of explaining the video and explaining kind of our setup, I put this together here. So we played a 3-4-1-2. As I mentioned, this was our personnel, little squad description here, as you can see on the side. So goalkeeper, good shot stopper. All three of our back three were right-footed. Our left-sided center back was a converted 6, was common possession. Did a very good job manipulating angles to create passing lanes for himself to break forward. So that's how we kind of dealt with that. And he also had a good enough left foot where he could play out of the back. And if a team forced him to play that way, which multiple oppositions did, his left foot was more than adequate to break lines and play forward. And so we felt confident that if a team was shielding the ball to our left-hand side, we could break forward. So center back was probably the best pure defender of the back three, dominant aerial ground duels, adequate distributor of the ball, but he's a little direct in his distribution. Right center back, very good distributor of the ball, had very good technique, good range of passing, would create a lot of our, if a team was pressing us high up the pitch, we were looking to play long, play for a second ball, or even look to create a transitional moment. Our right center back was where we kind of dictate our state of possession more. Both our double pivots covered a ton of ground, both very good in possession, as I mentioned earlier, talking about how we kind of earned the right to play over the course of the season. Both our double pivots were very good at receiving the ball back to the game, keeping possession, circulating the ball around the pitch for us to find an overload to break forward, something like that. Both very good players, both smaller guys, but again, covered a ton of ground and worked really hard in and out of possession. They would find themselves a little bit out of possession at times because they both like to break forward and again, cover a lot of ground, be very involved in the state of the game. So again, that created more transitional moments for us to defend. But again, we'll break into that a little bit in the tactical analysis. Wingbacks, our left wing back was right-footed, had an adequate left foot, was more than willing to get to the touchline and serve the ball on his left-hand side. In fact, I think as the season progressed, that was, what he was looking to do most of the time, is most of our opposition knew he was right-footed, would come inside on his right foot and serve the ball from different angles, depending on the opposition, what their defenders were looking to do, where they probably defended best in and around the box, but was more than adequate going down the left-hand side. Right wing back was a very good 1v1 attacker, very good athlete. I think he was a little conservative in his positioning and possession at time, and also just kind of his decision-making in possession. I think it limited our right-handed build-up in moments, so that was something to get into. Number 22, our attacking midfielder, very good player, very powerful off the dribble, can break lines, carry the ball forward in transition, good in and around the box, very creative. His decision-making at times was a little too direct, but very good player in terms of creating quality opportunities and, very powerful carrier and runner in transition. Center forward, number 16, very big physical profile. He was the one that started in this game. Williams, the player listed under him, was our backup center forward, came out off the bench. This game started at the very end of the season. Another very big physical profile, 6'2", 6'3", very powerful runner in transition, really powerful in the air as to kind of, your traditional center forward profile. Bayer was more, again, that traditional center forward profile, converted center forward, very powerful runner in transition, though, caused teams a lot of problems, very good in aerial and ground duels. Positioning and understanding the game was questionable in moments, and I think he was learning the, kind of the roles the season went on. Sometimes I think it took too many of his touches, but, he needs to be a little more efficient around the box, but that kind of gives you more of a profile there. O'Toole, the other center forward who started this game, very small player, I think 5'5", more of a second striker profile, even more of a 10 profile. Very quick on the ball, covers a ton of ground out of possession, works really hard out of possession, and is a good runner. Will run in behind, will provide, kind of a threat in transition as well. Size limits him in aerial and ground duels, and his possession temperament was a little too direct and sometimes would take a little too many touches as well. But that just gives you a little bit of a description as well in kind of how our team set up and then compared to the opposition. So our opponent in this match was Regis University. They finished second in the RMAC standings and lost in the semifinals of the RMAC tournament. They're located in Denver, Colorado. This was their setup as a team. So they set up in kind of a 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2 in possession shape. I think it tended to be more of a 4-4-2, but it did depend on the opposition, kind of the spaces, specifically whether the opposition set up in more of a double pivot, whether they had three midfielders, kind of a six profile, really depended on the setup of the opposition, and also depended on their structure and their ideals in possession. When they played us in this match, it was more of a 4-4-2 shape. And in the previous match, but prior to when they played us, they had played Fort Lewis University. That was more of a 4-4-2 setup, as Fort Lewis dominated more in possession and they'd look for counterattacking moments. So there are key players that I highlighted in this presentation when I was presenting this to the team were number 23, Liam Carr. Very good player, likes to cut inside on his right foot. Big threat, especially from deeper lying positions in terms of serving a ball into the box. Very good in terms of his crossing, his angles, and I think also was a very powerful runner in transition. He looked to drop deep at times and looked to run in behind. Was a big transition threat, as you'll see over the course of this whole analysis. Same thing with their right winger, Belina. Big transition threat in terms of his running and, wanted to cut it on his left foot. I would say he was less dangerous and more of established possession, wasn't looking to run as much and more looking to get the ball at his feet. 10, again, very big runner. He was extremely dangerous in transition. That was something I highlighted a lot, and we'll see later in this presentation. What was interesting about him is he looked to run, was left-footed, looked to run primarily into that left channel and behind. Was very good at running off the center back shoulders. And then the number 10, Betancourt Tovar, kind of played a hybrid role depending on the opposition, depending on the state of the game, the flow. Big transition threat as well. Both are double pivots, Golov and Grillistich, excuse me. More to 2 feet players, pretty good in the build-up, pretty good in understanding the game, both international players that played at a high level internationally. So they had a very good feel for the game in terms of creating angles to play out, finding overloads, whether that might be in a wide area, whether that might be an essential area to progress. Grilich was number 8 specifically, was good at, coming down and moving the wingbacks higher to create a 3-back setup to play out of, maybe a 3v2 overload there so they could break lines. Golov would come into wide areas, number 16, create overloads there to play out. So they were both very intelligent players and very good in possession. They didn't cover a ton of ground out of possession, and they were kind of weak in terms of ground duels at times. If it was, a tackle they had to go into, both in the air were fine. Outside backs, the left-sided center back was a better athlete. Got up and down the pitch more, I think was better in possession. They kind of dictated their possession down his side as well. Number 20, Follow, was just more of a traditional right back profile. Nothing special about him, was fine in the build-up. Didn't get forward as much, though, as the left side center back, and was a little weak sometimes in 1v1 defending. Not the greatest athlete. Center backs, number 6, not left-footed. Was fine in the build-up, was a better box defender. I think just better overall defender, good in aerial and ground duels. 26, I think, was the better athletic profile of the two. But his positioning and his reading the game were poor. That was something I really highlighted in this tape. And also his performances were up and down over the course of the season. So that's just a brief description. I try not to overload a lot of the player's information with too many details other than maybe specifically, like the left-sided winger, maybe he wants to play forward or whatnot. So this here would, yeah, here we go. Right here. So I start usually with their out of possession principles, as you see here. So highlighted is here. So this is what I thought they were going to look like based on their prior opponents. So like I said, they played Fort Lewis, who were considered one of the top teams in our league. They went to the Elite 8 this year of our region. So they sat in the 4-4-2 kind of mid-block shape against Fort Lewis. I expected them to do similar against us because I thought they were going to respect us and the way we had played. And we were coming off multiple matches where we had, earned the right to play against top level opposition, and they had sat back against us in a 4-4-2 mid block. So again, I thought it was gonna be a 4-4-2 mid block shape out of possession. It's a very narrow shape. That was something I identified over the course of this analysis in the film. Center backs, I just wanted to highlight this briefly there. Key principle of center backs, very reactionary, do a poor job of kind of marking and tracking runners. That was something I really wanted to emphasize over the course of this. So I emphasized it at the very start here. Then I usually break into our key points here. Key ideals I want our players and my teammates to be thinking about as we move into the clip section. Utilizing width, I thought was a really important one for this game for us. As I mentioned, they're really narrow in that 4-4-2 mid block. And also I felt like in moments we had opportunities to switch the balls and create overloads in wide areas because they did a poor job in putting adequate pressure a lot of times on the person with the ball, which I felt like created opportunities to switch the point of attack because, again, they're very narrow in their defending. Transition, again, something I wanted to point out, outside backs and even center backs, which I didn't emphasize here, but I emphasized as I was going over this in film with our squad was, I thought they got caught out of position. And like I mentioned earlier, the center backs and the center mids don't cover space that well. Um, as I mentioned there, or as I've already mentioned, their defenders do a poor job of finding and marking runners in the box. That was, again, something I want to mention. I thought it was really important going in this game to find opportunities to put crosses into the box and make them defend in the box. I didn't think they were great box defenders. 25, I really wanted to emphasize, and you'll see over this video analysis, I thought he's done a really he had done a really poor job in recent games of his awareness and just his body orientation when a ball was being played in behind. There's a few clips I really identified with that, and I felt like it'd be a great opportunity for our forwards. But I felt like we're arguably superior athletes than him to begin with, of looking to run off his shoulder, and especially in those transitional moments because of his body orientation, his body positioning. And another point I wanted to emphasize was that they really did not want to defend here. So these clips I'm going to run through, kind of explain briefly why I segmented these clips and what I was hoping my team would see out of it. So here you see ball gets into a wide area. Real quick, Regis are the team in white. So you see how narrow they are here, which is something I specialize. So the team in blue, they're playing as their opposition, Fort Lewis. See how narrow they are, not putting adequate pressure on the ball. Again, they're in the mid block here, but you can see that lack of pressure. Look how narrow they are on this right side, for example. That wingback's drifting high. That creates an opportunity. Again, no pressure on the ball. And you can see here as well, this is something I highlighted and we froze there. But look at the positioning of the right center back. He's caught a little bit out here, which creates space for their center forward to run in behind. So I understand, obviously, he's stepping there to that other center forward here, but it just creates space for them to run in behind. As I mentioned, their athletes aren't that superior. Creates an opportunity to put the ball in the box. And again, I mentioned they're poor defenders in the box here. You can see here, and this is something we highlighted, but look at the positioning of their center back here. He's very straight on. He's not checking his shoulders to understand where the space is or where his attacker is. And then obviously his athleticism as well. Not a powerful athlete, doesn't cover those last bits of ground here, and it's a goal for the opposition here. So that was, again, something we really specified here. 25, which I've really picked on over the course of this video analysis. This, I really want to talk about his box defending, specifically his ball watching, not picking up markers here. This is off a corner, but ball obviously gets thrown out here. And I especially in the film, I really focused on his position here. Again, not checking his shoulder, realizing he's a forward behind him, does not understand where the space is as well, that he's on the corner of the 6 there. So goal. And again, here's another clip here. I also showcase just how their center mids don't do a great job of tracking runners over the course of this clip, kind of talking about how they don't attack ground. This is another goal. You see here just a flick on, but I really focus here upon the positioning of number 8 and how he gets caught ball watching, doesn't track his runner here. An opportunity for maybe our number 10 or even one of our double pivots in this scenario to run him behind, as everyone is focused on the player with the ball. No one tracks the runner from a deep lying area, and it creates an opportunity, just a simple combination play, as you'll see here, for the runner to break through. Again, number 8, who's supposed to be the centerman, that's supposed to be the guy who's picking up, no idea until it's way too late, and he does not have the athleticism to recover there. This was, again, another goals. This comes off a free kick, and I was really emphasizing, again, their box defending here. So again, I pause it here. Everyone is ball watching. Ball comes off the crossbar. No one reacts, and it's a goal. So again, really trying to emphasize the box defending part of this here. So this here, again, I emphasize this in possession, but I was really emphasizing their transition deficiencies. So center back plays the ball, and I highlighted this when we were watching the opponent analysis. I had my coach freeze it here in this moment, but I was showcasing how number 25, when he plays this pass, is not aware of one, where his left center back is. There's a massive gap there, and he's playing relatively risky ball in the center of the pitch. Now, obviously, he doesn't think his center mid will lose the ball in this next clip, but he has no emphasis or urgency to step up here and out of position. It leaves a massive situation where there's a little bit of a gap and also an opportunity where he's not in line with his opposition center back, and no one is picking up, even though obviously they're in possession, no one is picking up the opposition center forward. So a quick transitional moment here, and all of a sudden they're out of position, and it can lead to an opportunity to break forward, which is exactly what happens here. Quick turnover in the center of the park, and I really, again, froze it here when they lost the ball, of look where their center back is. He's playing him onside here because he's not stepping up. Also, I mean, you could argue here the left center back's a little maybe too far forward, but that's a simple passing angle. And you look at the opposition positioning, they're kind of sitting in a deep block here in this clip. That's This is their center forward, but you can see everyone else is kind of sat off. So if this center back is simply caught forward, this should not have been a chance creating situation. And it's simply, this clip also shows their position in transition. I also emphasize this clip because look in this instance where their right center back is. And I talk about his ball watching instincts and how he does not pick up runners very well, especially in moments of transition. He's so focused on the ball here. The center forward plays this pass. It's clearly his man. This is the right back here, number 20, who's just barely coming into the picture. So there's all this massive space here behind him, and he has no idea that his center forward is drifted in behind him. Still ball watching, still has very little of awareness, and it's clear that the ball's coming into the box here. Still no awareness, and he finally reacts, but it's too late. A forward at a higher level probably takes that chance or better service. Again, this was another clip of player getting to the byline, and I circled and highlighted in this moment of all three of their defenders are ball watching. There's only two attackers in this clip. So they're both on the far post. So you can maybe say the player at the near post understands there's nobody near him, and he's trying to judge where the ball is coming into the box, whether he can play it, whether he can let it go. But the guys in the far post, this would have been the left back and actually the left midfielders, they were sitting in a deep block here, and it came from a throw-in, have no awareness, and they don't even bother to check where their players are. It should have been a goal. So another clip here. This is them again. They're in white in this clip, so they're a little bit of a more of a, they're pressing high up the pitch here. They're looking to win the ball against their opposition here, as you can see. So there are two center midfielders in the middle of the field. That's the player closest to the ball here, and the goalkeeper, number 9, is their center forward. Number 28 is in between the opposition's double pivots here, so he's trying to cut off a pass into there. But you can also see how narrow they are in this picture because their left midfielders all the way. Again, he's kind of pressing up on the opposition center backs there. So that's one of them. And then the right side of midfielder is very far tucked inside, which just showcases how narrow they are in possession. And you can see the opposition outside backs. However, they're not putting adequate pressure on the ball here, which allows, and as I highlighted there, you can see how narrow they are again in possession. No adequate pressure on the ball allows that big switch. And also the opposition's left midfielder here is very intelligent, and that he's tucked inside and is forcing his opposition fullback to come farther inside. He's also higher up the pitch to make his opposition fullback respect him, which creates an outlet on the other side. And this was something that was very apparent when watching them in film, that you can create an outlet here. This creates a 2v1 situation. Obviously, a great ball from the goalkeeper out, but it creates just a situation to break forward because of lack of adequate pressure on the ball and being in too narrow in possession. So this creates a chance here. Again, I highlight here. This is, you could argue, a little bit more of, the left back in this picture clearly probably knows he's checked his shoulder prior to this. There's somebody on the far side, but he also has to be aware there's two runners in the box here. Left center back obviously probably has to deal with this guy here, but there's no communication. And I'd probably blame this clip more on the left back. But you look at the left center back's position, the ball is about to be served in the box here. He's very flat-footed and no reaction. Excuse me. Is not in a position to react at all. Ball actually goes right over his shoulder in this clip, but because of his body orientation, is because of positioning, creates an opportunity there. They deal with it, but it's poor positioning and poor body orientation for the fullback. So in this clip here, ball is kicked up in the air. It's a transitional moment, but you can see on the far side that opposition fullback is not pressed up at all. He reacts late, ball over the top. That was something I emphasized in my key points. Is their fullbacks and just their back line in general sometimes out of sync and create space to play forward. This was something I highlighted earlier on. Center backs their center mids, do a poor job of tracking runners, especially in and around the box. This is a run, again, from a little bit of a deeper lying position. And the center mid does not track his runners. This was something I was trying to emphasize to our number 10s and our pivots of, can you make a late run into the box? Can you be running off a player's shoulder? So again, ball's played in a wide area. They're pressed a little higher up the pitch here. So I'd say, definitely not in a mid block here, but, ball's played in a wide area, putting some bit of pressure on the ball. But again, right here, you see how narrow they are. So that's the opposition fullbacks tucked in the other side. This was the key principle with them in their out of possession setup, is that's their midfielders tucked so far inside. He's trying to cut off the pass into the double pivot. But again, as you see, as this clip plays on, they don't put adequate pressure on the ball. And because they're so narrow, again, it creates an overload on the far side of the pitch, an opportunity to switch the ball and break forward. So again, this was something I highlighted. Can we use our wing backs? Play forward. We have 3 center backs. Can we cycle it back to them? Lack of adequate pressure on the ball, and you can play forward. And you can see here a little bit of their transition vulnerabilities. The opposition gets a little bit lucky there, but you can see runs from deep cause them issues. Their center backs, their center mids struggle to deal with balls in deep. So the purpose of this clip here, as I've mentioned here, is obviously just highlighting a tactical advantage for MSU Denver, which is the point of this video. I'm talking about the opposition here in my brief description. They switched to a 4-4-2 as they were chasing the game a little bit more. And you can see how their forward, as I mentioned here, that far-sided forward, so the 4-4-2 setup was tucked inside. You can see how narrow they are and how that center back doesn't want to defend, that it creates a far-sided overload. You'll see in this clip, this is a good ball from the opposition, but just a simple switch, and it creates a massive opportunity here by overloading their back line. They struggle to deal with runners, and also just that narrow setup can create opportunities for a big diagonal opportunity. So this clip I highlight here is just that center mids, not great duelers, don't cover a great amount of ground. Again, far switch to the other side because of how narrow they are. You can break forward, find an opportunity to switch, create somewhat of an opportunity for the opposition. So again, lack of pressure on the ball here. They're probably sitting in more of this is clearly a mid-block shape, but they're putting a lack of pressure on the ball. The player's almost at the midfield line here. And again, they're extremely narrow in the setup. This is fine. Obviously, the winger drops back here. But you can see here still lack of pressure on the ball. And this is the key principle here because this is Fort Lewis's number 10. He's dropped into space here, but there's lack of communication. If you're in a mid-block shape, your center mid is probably a good argument they should be picking up. Their center mids don't pick him up. So allows space in the half space to turn. He reacts late, actually, but that creates, again, an opportunity to switch the ball. And lack of pressure on the ball, again, creates opportunities for a far side switch because of how narrow they are. So that was, again, a key principle I was trying to emphasize. Again, that winger gets out late here, and it creates an opportunity for them to break forward. They have a far-sided overload, put the ball in the box, create somewhat of a dangerous opportunity, lose a corner kick there. So there's a turnover higher up the pitch, just kind of emphasized there a little bit. Like this clip was more emphasizing, again, if they're struggling to pass on runners, especially, again, Fort Lewis in a 4-4-2 setup here. Their center backs, again, specifically this right side center back, very poor body positioning and understanding where his opposition's runners are, and it leads to an opportunity for the opposition to play a ball behind. Again, we have a two-striker setup at Metro, so I was saying, can our striker look to play off that player's shoulder, create an opportunity to run behind? Probably should have been a goal there. So we just win the ball here. They're in possession. They lose the ball. This clip, again, emphasizing transitional moments. So, again, pivot loses the ball. And, again, I was really harping on this right center back in this clip. But his body orientation and positioning doesn't understand the runners, reacts late there, does a decent job of recovering. His right back actually helps him quite a bit there. But, again, his body orientation, body positioning, especially considering where they lose the ball in that clip, is too flat-footed, doesn't understand the space behind him, also doesn't understand it's a turnover relatively higher up the pitch, considering where their positioning is a team. So that means there's a lot of space to play in behind, and I just thought it was lack of good body positioning and awareness from the center back, which is something I emphasize to our team. Again, lose the ball in possession, and you can see, especially that left center back, something I emphasize here, and I think I forgot to emphasize in the key points, but I talked about as I did this film analysis. He was very aggressive in stepping out, and it created a lot of vulnerabilities, especially against a two-striker setup here. So you see a great opportunity here because he steps out, is very aggressive in his temperament, and leaves massive space for his center back partner to cover, especially in a two-striker setup. So that probably should have been a goal. See it again, that left center back a little aggressive and stepping out here, late to react. This right center back actually does a really good job in recovering in this clip. But again, that was something I wanted to emphasize, is that the center back's temperaments in terms of how they wanted to step out and cover ground were not on the same level. So one was super aggressive, and I think was a little poor and rash in his decision making. And that was something I wanted to emphasize. Both our forwards are quick and good athletes. So if they can beat him and stepping out, creates opportunities. So here's just kind of head tennis. This clip eventually leads to an opportunity to play over position. And again, that right center back's positioning wasn't great. And you also see how narrow it was. So that was something I wanted to emphasize over just my team as I was doing this film analysis, is they usually play with a relatively high line. And in moments you can win in just quick transitional moments, look for an opportunity to play in behind. So this was one of a few clips. They don't press very much, as I mentioned there. There was a few clips we mentioned earlier, them in a high block. But again, they weren't really pressing, I would say, in that high block. This was one of the few clips that are actually pressing higher up the pitch. They had scored in this game early on, looking to create an opportunity to score a second goal probably. So they play short here. And again, you can see the setup. This is more, again, probably a 4-4-2 setup, you could argue, with that second forward screening the opposition's pivot. So as you can see here, again, very narrow in the setup, kind of encouraging the ball here. Ball's played back to the center back. I will say this is I highlight here, this center forward does a good job here in this clip, actually right here, looks to cut off the switch rather than forcing adequate pressure on the ball right away and looking to force them to play long. As you can see there, it's a 4v4 at the back, so that probably focuses a little bit on why they're not probably looking to play a long ball right away. He limits his passing options and forces him to play in the middle of the pitch. And as I mentioned there, this is kind of, I think, why they were trying to be narrow and having that far-sided midfielder, wide midfielder pinching inside, especially against a double pivot here. He actually is able to, as you can see in the clip, pick off the pass. That was something I wanted us to be aware of, is they're very narrow and that winger can jump in those moments to pick off a pass. So be very wary of central progression when they're pressing high off the pitch and trying to skip maybe to the far-sided. We play the double pivots, trying to skip to that far-sided pivot for us. So now